Humans aren't born out of laying around on their asses. We're the dominant species. We built all this. We're powerful and we're beautiful and we're ready to build the next level of civilization in God's plan. If you love God and you want to build a pro-human future, you must become the victor. But you have to believe in yourself first. This is the truth, and everyone knows it.
Ladies and gentlemen, there is something inherently inferior about the mind of a leftist. Somebody that is divorced from reality, refuses to acknowledge it, doesn't learn, doesn't adapt, doesn't grow, is completely and totally stagnant in everything that they believe. And so yet again, we have another studio being Thanos snapped out of existence. 185 people have been fired. These are people that worked on Star Wars Outlaws, Skull and Bones, Avatar, Frontiers of Pandaria. This is something that was easily avoidable. You just have to make a good game for the core audience of what you're working on. Skull and Bones. How simple is that? You already have the foundation for something that people liked. If I'm working at Ubisoft and you come to me and you say, okay, we want to make a pirate game on the open seas, swashbuckling and all that, I'm like, brilliant. You print money. Take the seafaring mechanics of Black Flag, update it, add in some new ships, new stuff. Make it compelling, add some islands, add a story, gussy it up, make it cool, make it epic, add in some PvP, go wild. But it's open water warfare, which is just cool. People are going to be into it. But for some reason, they put a ridiculous art style on it. They make the mechanics absolutely unbearable. Like, everything that you could do to mess it up, they do it. Including the marketing of calling it the first quadruple A game. Everything that these people do is wrong, and I don't understand. Maybe it's because I'm not a mentally ill, mentally retarded, degenerate, demonic leftist. But I don't get it. Star Wars Outlaws. Again, if you had come to me and you said, okay, I have an idea for an open world Star Wars game, I'd say brilliant. Okay, the main character's a woman. You're fired. You're fired. Get out. Don't pack your stuff up. We'll pack it for you. Goodbye. That is the stupidest idea I've ever heard. And before all the simps chimp out in the, comment section, I would choose a character like Starkiller to be the main character. And by the way, you don't have to be that quirky to be good. It's Star Wars. The ingredients are already baked into the cake. You really don't have to be that quirky to be good. If you show a lot of nostalgia with a new story, hell, all you'd really have to do is go back to Star Wars The Old Republic, the MMO. Pick a story from any of the multitude of character class stories. Pick one of those and make an open world game about it. All of those stories are infinitely better than anything that came out of Star Wars Outlaws. You don't have to be that quirky to be good. You don't have to add some kind of twist or alteration. But here's the deal, and we've talked about this. Another studio from Ubisoft is closing. And why? Because they all thought that they were too big to fail. They thought that they could do no wrong. Now, I want to show you something else. A game that's going to be upcoming. A game that's going to be upcoming called Assassin's Creed Shadows. This game is being ripped apart. It's being mocked. Like this picture right here, where the rifle goes straight through the helmet. And you've got watermelons. Big, ridiculously, comically large watermelons, which is, to me, pretty freaking hilarious. You have failure after failure after failure, and I don't understand how there's not leadership in place to prevent all of this from reaching the public. I don't understand how there isn't a team of people that are just waiting to gatekeep all of the bad ideas out of these games. If you really stop and think about it, the fact that these games made it to the point where they could even engage in the bad marketing that they do is a miracle. You think about it. Like, you had to come up with so many bad ideas. Here's another one. Here's another one. I don't know if oh, yeah. We're going to do a video on this in itself. This is the female sumo wrestler. There were no female sumo wrestlers. Ubisoft made this up. They wanted to put in a fat, ugly woman to be progressive. And I mean, just look at it and absorb it. This is what you have to get rid of in your company. Not this image in particular, the mindset that created this. Because I don't care if it's women or if it's men who I am non-binary, if it's one of these LGBTQ freaks. Doesn't matter what it is. Whoever and whatever is behind this needs to be purged from your company. They need to be removed because they are a cancer, they are a blight. Look at this. And so we're talking about a studio closing. We're talking about Ubisoft losing 185 people. 185 people are out of a job. That is significant. That is an entire studio gone. And so, as I sit here, I just want to point out yet again that as much as these studios may not like people like myself because we're critical, in the end, if you swallowed your pride, swallowed your ego, and actually listened to the feedback, because I know that some people who work at these companies, they get very triggered on my language, my tone, how I say something, the fact that I call these people freaks, which they are, the fact that I call them mentally ill, which they are, the fact that I put them down and insult them, which all of the insults are true. But if you actually put that aside for a second and you listened to what I'm saying is a foolproof, money-making formula that is a recipe for success almost every time. Because with the properties that you're working on, I mean, it's so simple. Anyone could do it. It's not that I think that I'm some kind of genius. Skull and Bones, what do people want? Warfare on the open seas. Maybe some PvP elements with friends. They just don't have what it takes anymore to do the job. And I think a lot of that is DEI, a lot of that is, this sort of, LGBTQ, pro-trans, left-wing, brain-rotted orthodoxy, where you hire the worst and dullest. Not the best and brightest, you hire the worst and the dullest. Over and over. And then you fundamentally change the culture at these companies for the worse. So now you're not making games for gamers, you're making games for the freaks that work in the inner circle. They're making stuff for themselves. Everything's about them. Everything's about their journey and their experience. And in the end, you alienate people, you drive them away. And you bury yourself for no upside, no reason. 185 people are out of a job. Didn't have to be that way. You chose to embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion. You chose to embrace a cancerous, regressive, racist, sexist, backwards, anti-consumer ideology to satisfy the ego of your employees, which are now fired, which are gone. Now, they may be gone, but you're going to face the financial brunt of this for years. You're going to face the reputational damage for years. You are going to be the one to pay the price for their ego and their vanity, their greed, their gluttony, their lust, all this other stuff. Because you didn't have leaders, you didn't have masculine men in charge to tell these women no. You had a bunch of simps and suckers and losers and beta males that just agreed with everything because they thought that maybe it would get their, get their penis sucked, or maybe they get laid if they're really lucky. It never happened, but that was the goal. Otherwise, I see absolutely no upside to hiring a bunch of women in your company when it comes to gaming. The predominant majority of people who are going to play a Star Wars game are men. So you would want sweaty, greasy neckbeards to be the ones to devise it. People who are deep into the Star Wars lore. I would like it just once for the people working on a game to actually impress the audience with the Easter eggs, with the lore, with how much they give a damn. And actually be worth the money for once. But here we go. Another studio down. Another company with their stock price plummeting. Should we pull it up? Should we pull up the stock price of Ubisoft? I mean, let's see. What is it on the day? Oh, not that bad on the day. Just 0.43. How about the last year? Oof. 42%. How about the last 5 years? Tells you something, doesn't it? Tells you something pretty unbelievable, doesn't it? This company, I don't think is going to make it out of 2025. And just 5 years ago, this company was, that's 80 euros. And that's 80 euros per share. Now they're down to 11. Is it only because of DEI and wokeness? No. But it plays a huge part. And this is something that people don't understand. Because it's not just in the end result. Like a game comes out, it's got DEI. But your marketing team, your HR team, your development team, the atmosphere that people have to work in, the people that choose to leave because that atmosphere is so toxic and left-wing and disgusting. There are so many things that are a result of this one thing. And unfortunately, what we're experiencing is a metaphorical bloodbath. How many studios have shut down? Firewalk Studios, completely gone. 175 people. Just boom, their job is gone. Snap. Oh, another 500, 600. Studios are falling, and it seems like there's no concern. There's no interest in it. Why are these studios being allowed to fail this way? There should be a deep and profound fight to restore the reputation and credibility of these studios. Because once upon a time, Ubisoft actually meant something. And to further prove my point, let me pull this up. if I can. Bear with me for 1 second. This is impromptu, but I really think this is important. Believe it or not. Do you remember this game? The Stick of Truth? Publisher Ubisoft. This is just one of many games. This came out in 2014. One of many games that Ubisoft put out that was just absolutely phenomenal. It was culturally relevant. It was fascinating. They don't do games like that anymore. They don't take risks. Ironically, they think that what they're doing is playing it safe. They do. They think going down the DEI route is playing it safe. But the DEI route is basically managed decline, is what it is. It's you saying, okay, well, we're going to kill ourselves, but we're going to do it slowly. We're not just going to take out the gun and eat the bullet. We're going to do it slowly. And unfortunately, it's taken 5 years, but you're there. Another studio goes down. Nearly 200 people are out of a job. And they worked on games that should have been some of the biggest of the year. Or in the case of 2024, the biggest of last year. But they weren't. And so I will continue to talk about this and vocalize this in the hopes that maybe someday somebody will get past their feelings and actually listen. And maybe make some money and make some good games for people. Fundamentally, what you need to understand, and no one else is going to tell you this but me, you need to ditch anything, and I mean anything having to do with LGBTQ. The reference of it, the mention of it, pronouns, oh, I'm non-binary, purge that. Purge it. Anything to do with DEI. And DEI, by the way, is the same thing as affirmative action of the past. It is the idea and the presupposition that we have to have quotas, that this character has to be black because this character is white. That we need some kind of arbitrary quota based on race or based on gender. Purge that. Obliterate it. Nintendo doesn't do that with The Legend of Zelda or Super Mario, do they? Do you see the most profitable franchises in the world try that? Do you think Nintendo's going to do that? Hey, you know what? Princess Zelda is white. So what we need to do is we need to make a Princess Zelda who's black. It's never going to happen. There's a reason why Princess Peach came out, and then Princess Daisy comes out, and she's as white as the wind-driven snow. Having artificial diversity is immediately noticeable, and every person hates it. They may say that they don't for virtue points online, but they don't like it. Having authentic black characters, let me just briefly touch on that. I think it's a positive. I think it's good. Because there's no reason that black people shouldn't have heroes to look up to and aspire to if, watching Goku isn't enough. When I was growing up, we didn't have this sort of racial divide, so it's sort of new territory. When all my black friends would watch Dragon Ball Z, they weren't like, man, Goku's not black, so I don't understand. My Hispanic friends didn't look at Goku and say, yeah, but he's not Hispanic. No, everyone's like, Goku's awesome. By the way, when I was growing up, anime was a little bit more scarce, so people would come home after school, and then they would watch, Toonami. They'd watch Dragon Ball Z, and then we'd all talk about it the next day. Everyone. Of every race. Dragon Ball Z was the greatest unifier that I've ever seen when it comes to entertainment. There's been nothing like Dragon Ball Z. Everyone loved it. Didn't matter what kind of upbringing you had. Doesn't matter if you're rich or poor. Dragon Ball Z was it. It was the coolest thing. Everyone loved it. Everyone was doing Kamehamehas. Everyone was going Super Saiyan when it came out. I tell you what, you want to talk about, these, One Piece and stuff. and how, oh yeah, One Piece is great. It is great. But the cultural impact doesn't even compare to Dragon Ball Z. Dragon Ball Z was the OG. Anyway, that's a side tangent. When I was growing up in school, Dragon Ball Z was it. Um, but when it comes to this stuff that we see from Ubisoft, it's the same mistake made over and over. And I think part of it is that you have people that don't want to be told no, but I'm telling you no. And ultimately, I'm your boss. And I know that this may seem kind of arrogant, but here's the deal. I sign your paycheck because without my purchase and the purchase of millions of others, your game doesn't sell. Your bosses look at that and go, oh, okay, this is obviously a bad idea, and so your entire team is gone. That's the way I see it. So the smart thing to do, the intelligent thing to do, would naturally be to make something that appeals to the people that you're trying to target. It's logical. It's not, any sort of magician's code. You wouldn't, for example, go to, like a Comic-Con selling auto parts. You wouldn't go to a Comic-Con and say, I've got the best, I've got the best rims for your lowrider. It's like, well, that wouldn't obviously work because the people there probably, for the most part, don't have that. They don't have that interest. They don't have that sort of mindset. It would be completely off point. That's the mentality you have to have. You have to do your research to understand who you're trying to appeal to, who you're trying to target, who you want to buy this. And if you have the wrong vision of that, you can make a lot of really egregious mistakes that cost you in the long run, and then ultimately you get fired, and then nobody wins. But this is definitely not the right way. This is not the way. Well, I think that'll do it. I think I've made my point. I have to do another thing on that one in particular, because that is just so hilariously bad. It's like making a fat sumo wrestler female character in the 1500s is only something that only something that somebody with an agenda and a motivation beyond just the game could envision. Anyway, that'll do it. Thanks for the support, as always. Thanks for watching, and have a great night.